Hello everyone, my name is Krishna Manda. I co-lead global sustainability at the Lenzing Group and also report to the managing board. Lenzing is a Austrian-based international company known for its wood-based cellulose fibers with brand names such as Tencel, Ecovero, and those. We are a team of 7,500 people around and having a revenue of more than 2.2 billion euros. Today, I would like to share our journey. In 2016, we have approached our managing board to get approval on our sustainability strategy and also targets. One of the targets was a carbon neutrality by 2040. The board has approved the strategy and other targets, but except this one. They told us, forget about carbon neutrality goal. We can't even approve an absolute reduction for the Lenzing group. I want to remind you that it was in 2016, and Paris Agreement, which was clinched in December 2015, is still seeping into the minds of many decision makers, media outlets, but also policymakers. So there was not much awareness, but also there was not so many role models to look up to. So we had to shelve this target despite one of our board members was really supportive and we couldn't do anything more then. But we have to accept that that time hasn't yet come for that target. Um, I would like to invite you to imagine yourself. Where are you standing right now in your journey? And I also wanted to bring to your attention that there are around 120 companies in our sector either committed to set a science-based target or have an approved science-based target. Um, However, all of us do not know how do we reach net zero or how do we reach our science-based targets by 2030 or 2035. This is a puzzle we all need to solve together. Despite that, we could actually get a science-based target for Lenzing Group. And today, I would like to share with you our journey by reflecting and also telling you where we are right now in our journey. So in 2019, October, we have got our science-based targets approved by the initiative. I think we are the first raw material producer to have a science-based target in our industry. And our target is to reduce scope 1, 2, and 3 emissions by 50% per ton of product by 2030 and become net zero by 2050. And I would like to bring to your attention that conventionally business targets are in the time frame of 3 to 5 years, right? But the science-based targets are actually in the time frame of 5 to 15 years. So this long-term time frame actually creates a lot of ambiguity and also uncertainty in the conversations we have with our colleagues. And these things have created a feeling of inadequacy in myself because the things you care about makes you vulnerable. The things you care about break your heart. It's hard to really care about a person, a pursuit, or a project. This poem from David White actually resonated with me so well. And I do know that not only for science-based target, but there are so many wicked sustainability problems that we are all kind of trying to find solutions. And I know that in that journey, most of the times or many times, we also feel that inadequacy. So I would like to remind to our we change makers need to remember that we need to have self-compassion towards ourselves and accept that it is okay to not have all the answers. It is okay if we cannot convince everybody. And it is even okay to fail sometimes and or maybe get delayed in our pursuit of targets or objectives and whatever it is. The same way, we also need to have empathy towards the decision makers who needs to approve these programs and targets. And they are actually accustomed to set targets for maybe a time frame of 3 to 5 years maximum, but they never has actually had a chance to do for a 5 to 15 years time frame targets in the past. So they are also very uncomfortable not knowing how the blueprint to reach the target actually looks like. And I also know that some of these decision makers are also very, very worried about what happens to their teams, the growth projections they have. There's so many things that they are also concerned and worried about, right? So it's the same thing with many business functions we are working in our industry, right? In our company as such. So we need to have that empathy towards them. And the other important thing is to be healthy and also to be creative. We need to create a routine of rejuvenation on a daily basis, and it may be taking a walk every day, or yoga, meditation, jogging, music, whatever brings you a distance between yourself and your work is very important. I think once we have created this space with self compassion, empathy, and resignation, we can actually hold this space in the conversations we have with our colleagues in this change making process. So I wish I had known this 7, 10 years ago, so my journey could have been much easier. But nevertheless, I learned this hard way. And I hope you actually can use this framework to have conversations. So let me share the way we have actually got the science-based target in our company using this framework for me and some of our team members as well. Um, so we all know that there is no perfect moment. We need to start now. This is the best moment to start anything. And we are actually learning on the go, and it's a iterative process. We don't have all the answers, right? And actually, as you heard from me, that in 2016 we have failed, but you need to reframe that failure. And we have reframed it as data collection point. Why did we fail? What is missing? What could have given confidence to people? So we have started looking into that, and we have brought a fantastic colleague who knows about the technology and the company very well, who was kind of championing the roadmaps and those in the process. So we learned from there, and we have brought that change in the process of change making we approached. And engagement is a very key foundation for bringing any change we are actually embarking on. For example, it is not only important to get that target approved, but also in order to make the momentum for the implementation of the target, also you need to engage not only your internal colleagues, but also your external, for example, suppliers, most important suppliers. So in our company, we have actually engaged the top 40 decision makers, like right from the C-suite to senior VPs, regional leaders, and functional leaders, and we have sat with them one on one, in some cases 1.5 to 2.5 hours, to understand what are their concerns, what are their challenges, what can they contribute, why they actually need to have this science based target in our company. And all those conversations we had with them, and we have created this along the same way we have also contacted our suppliers, main suppliers, about our ideas and what they can contribute. So this is a key foundation for me. And the third thing is using the industry aligned tools such as HIG-MSI in our case. Yeah, when we achieve this, the science-based target, suppose, and in that supposition, you also need to show to your colleagues how would your fibers look like in terms of MSI score, and how would they compare with their peers or other competing materials, or the materials from the same category, so they can visualize if we achieve this target, where will we end up and how much differentiation we create with that. And we also talked about in the case of strategic growth projects, like if we wanted to grow in this area, what is still possible and allowed with the science based targets in mind. Are we allowed to still use natural gas in the next 10 years? Or can we need to actually use only biomass or some other renewable fuels? And what kind of score we might be able to create with that for our fiber in the future? So we also have used MSI for those conversations within the company. So why it is important is MSI has an industry alignment between the manufacturers, brands, and retailers, right? So, and also it has been checked by the scientists and also experts in the area. And because of that, credibility, the decision makers also have actually taken it more seriously. So this is very important for us to have something to show concretely how your fibers may look like in the future, for example. And also we need to understand what moves actually people, what motivates people, especially the decision makers. Some are cost driven, some of them are actually sales driven, some are risk driven, some wanted to kind of progress in their career, some wanted to get a promotion, right? And some also wanted to listen about whether it is important or not from their peers, for example. So you need to find out what motivates and moves these people to move the needle. So once you have that understanding, you can have a good conversation to put climate change into that context. Yeah. And we also have been very lucky to have a few board members who are actually supporting us. And it was really made a big impact on the guidance and coaching we got from them periodically. And I also would advise, if you can get a top leader support, it would be great. And I would like to say the most important thing, I think we are all selfish humans, right? We need to see what's in it for me is the most important thing we always ask in our conversations, right? The business case, nothing but, right? So we try to link the climate change target to the business drivers or business case. For example, how much cost can we reduce in the future? For example, the European emission trading scheme is now more than 25 euros per ton of CO2, the CO2 price, right? So if you can reduce emissions, you need to pay less in terms of those kind of carbon taxes, you can call, right? So, and we also looked into what kind of opportunities we create in terms of new product creations, and also how can we create attract new investors. So I will talk about concrete examples later. So we already talked about these kind of things to kind of conjure up in the minds of decision makers what type of advantages we may have by having this target. And the most important, to be authentic. There are, we don't know many answers, right? But still, we have a lot of information, and within our economic models today and within the technological limits, we can still assemble roadmaps. What can we achieve? What can be achievable in the next 7 to 5 years, 5 to 7 years? Are And also we need to include the growth, risk, and cost in these conversations so that they can see, while growing, how much can we still meet this target. So these kind of things are also very important, which gives a lot of kind of confidence to the decision makers to take decisions, right? And I must say, this may not be enough in many cases, and the leadership should be visionary, because there is no concrete blueprint. How do you get there? Forget about net zero. How do you get your science-based target, right? Which is also very ambitious. So, but we need to maybe either have visionary leaders, that was our case, and or maybe invoke visionary leadership in others, right? So in the case of manufacturers like Lenzing, we have a scope 1 and 2 impact of 50%. That means we need to reduce our own impact 50%. That means it's a lot of responsibility on our shoulders. But luckily, our leadership was visionary, so they also actually embrace this target, because if we don't do, who will do it, right? If we would, now is not the right moment, then when is the right moment? But also, you need to talk to some decision makers, definitely. What is the cost of, I mean, inaction, right? So if you don't actually have a target and you don't reduce kind of ambitiously, then your CO2 prices will increase. Right now, I said 15 euro or 25 euros, but it may be 50 euros in 3 years. And also, currently, the natural gas price have skyrocketed by 4 times in Europe. So these are all adding to your energy costs. And once the governments make climate change a mandatory target, like that would be the case that I predict in Europe. And also China is actually now curtailing the production capacity of some companies, naming that the regional CO2 targets haven't been achieved. That means they are reducing their emissions. So there is no actually certainty for companies if they have higher emissions. But think about, once this is being made mandatory, you cannot make any differentiation with others because everybody is in the same boat and everybody has to reduce their emissions. So it is wise to have a target now and work towards that by creating that differentiation in the market. So we have to talk to our decision makers about all those things. Luckily, in our case, we could get the science-based target approved by the initiative and our decision makers. And once the target has been approved, we have seen how the process of governance takes place. Our CEO said he wants to own this project, so he actually set up this project with a cross-functional steering committee with leaders from different business functions. From sustainability, I was also one of the steering committee members, and still. And we have one dedicated project manager who is actually the champion of our roadmaps and also kind of bring the know-how to the different teams. And we are actually making the quarterly progress meetings to see where we are actually and where we need to make progress, at the same time get the buy-in of different functional leaders. And these quarterly meetings with the CEO and the steering committee has improved a lot the roadmap and implementation aspects of the company. And the most important thing is also that what we measure only can be managed, right? So in our management reviews, not only costs and revenues have been part of that, but we also added CO2 emissions and also energy related aspects as well, part of the KPIs, right? Having all these things, the dedicated project manager is helping the functional leaders and the facility leaders to develop their own roadmaps, and they were made owners because they need to implement it. So using these things, we have done also other things, such as we have integrated our CO2 target in the business targets. So it is not separate from business, but it is integral part of the business. And we created a milestone target for the business by 2024. And also we have conducted TCFD risk and opportunities frameworks and assessments in the company, and we have set an internal carbon price, and we have made ourselves accountable by disclosing periodically how what we are doing in the company for achieving this target in the CDP. Um, these are some of the things, and in action, that in reality we have also improved and reduced our emissions. We have transformed 4 of our facilities to use 100% of green electricity from the grid, and we have been transforming one facility in Asia, in China, from coal to natural gas completely, which will reduce 50% of emissions from that facility itself, around 200,000 tons. All these things will lead to around 15% of our scope 1 and 2 emission reduction in absolute terms, right? And similarly, we have, when we have created our growth roadmap, we have accounted our climate change target, and we are making a mega project in Brazil, in the south of Brazil, a huge pulp production facility. This will be using completely 100% sustainable biomass for its energy needs, but also around 50% of this energy will be excess, and it will be supplied to the grid in Brazil, which can replace natural gas based electricity from the grid. So we can be called as a carbon positive site there, right? And the similar way, so we are actually constructing the lyocell plant in Thailand, and this plant is actually be run on 100% sustainable bioenergy. So it will be scope 1 and 2 carbon neutral. So even if you do the growth to replace the dirty fibers in the market, we need to be still carbon neutral. Yeah. And so far, I talked about the dimension of pushing in the company, whether it is operations, whether it's strategy, whether it's procurement. But we also need to create the pull from the market, such as we have attracted 2 billion euro of investment for our company in the last 2.5 years with favorable interest rates. Yeah. And similarly, we have got leadership credentials from CDP as a double A for forest and climate. which also attracting long-term investor for the company. And we have created a new product range called True Carbon Zero for textile market, with the lowest carbon footprint fibers in the industry in their own category of fibers. So all these things also create the pull and create the confidence in the company to push their agendas and the roadmaps within the company, right? So to summarize, we have very strong leadership and governance within the company, and we also have integration within the internal facing functions and also external facing functions. But these two are not enough to reach our targets, right? The most important thing is engagement and collaboration within the company and outside our company with the supply chain partners, but also within the whole value chain and also the brands and retailers and policymakers. One aspect I want to remind all of us is that we need to pay for the transition of climate change. I mean all manufacturers. That means Lenzing needs to pay for the transition, the brands and retailers need to pay for the transition of the climate change, and the consumers need to pay for the transition for the climate change. And actually we need to actively work with the policymakers to create a framework that can help create level playing field for low carbon products and opportunities in the future. So we should not neglect that aspect for sure, right? So I would like to invite to be part of the policy hub, where I'm co-chairing as well, to work with the policymakers to create that kind of ambitious framework. And I would like to remind you still, keep that self compassion, empathy, resignation as the holding space for having all these conversations to lead the change. I wish you very best. Thank you very much for giving this opportunity. Thank you.